When Oleana first stepped into the little bakery on the corner, warmth folded around her like a blanket. The air was thick with a scent of fresh bread, butter, cinnamon, and something that felt like home. Sunlight slipped through fogged-up windows and laid golden shapes across the glass case. For a moment, her chest went quiet. Here, the world seemed to stop rushing. Behind the counter stood a woman with dark hair pinned up in a loose knot. Flour dusted her cheek. Focus lived in her eyes alongside a steady gentleness. "Are you Yulia?" she asked, taking off her gloves with a shy smile. "I'm Alona. If you're not afraid of early mornings and the smell of yeast, we'll get along." "I'm not," Oleana said. "The smell of bread is the best morning." Their beginning was awkward and right, like a first dough you don't know yet but already trust to rise. Alona moved with calm assurance, as if she could hear gluten breathing and the oven talking to the room. Yulia caught every gesture, how Alona tucked bowls beneath warm towels, how she touched the peel, how she marked notes, and thought she had never seen such delicate strength. Days settled into a new rhythm. At dawn, while the city still slept, they unlocked the door, put on the kettle, and checked the ovens. Life returned to the room. Parchment rustled, cups chimed, crust bloomed, cinnamon glowed. Between chores came short laughs, sidelong words, glances. The silences grew longer and richer, full of meanings that needed no speech. "Why a bakery?" Yulia asked once, while the dough rose under a warm cloth. "Because bread is honest," Alona said, her voice barely trembling. "If you give it warmth, it gives it back. If you betray it, it collapses." "Sounds like people," Yulia smiled. "I wanted to learn how to love at least something properly," Alona answered and fell quiet. They stayed late after shifts. On the back patio, they sat in old chairs, drank tea from thick mugs, and listened to the sky darken. Yulia told stories from her past. Alona listened, sometimes laughed, sometimes kept a careful silence that felt like putting each word away on a shelf. At times their fingers met, accidentally from the outside, but for them it was that tiny yes that changes the heart's direction. On a rainy evening the shop emptied. They turned off the overhead lights, leaving only the warm lamp above the counter. Alona was moving loaves into baskets. Yulia was wiping tables. The air rang. "You look at me like you're about to say something," Alona whispered. "I'm afraid if I do, everything will change," Yulia answered honestly. "Sometimes it's meant to," Alona said, and stepped closer. The kiss arrived quietly. No firework, no theater, just a soft touch, a warmth that straightened their shoulders, and the certainty that this wasn't an accident. When they parted, Alona smiled with her eyes.
"Well,
Now, yes." Outside, nothing dramatic happened. Morning rolls still appeared. The scored loaves still breathed open. The city still hurried past the glass. Inside, everything shifted. Their glances lingered longer. Their hands found each other more often. Their silences felt like home. The bakery became more than a shop. Neighbors in work jackets, students with notebooks, people walking dogs, everyone drifted in and slowed down, as if they sensed the place baked not only dough but comfort. Customers left calmer than they had arrived. Sometimes they said, "It feels like home here." Yulia and Alona smiled and nodded, not adding that for them it truly was. Homes get tested. The oven failed first, suddenly, on a busy day. Metal clinked. Heat vanished like a blown-out candle. Alona went pale, her lips tight. There had been too many losses in her life that couldn't be fixed. Yulia moved before fear spread, part of the dough into cold fermentation, part into the tiny backup oven, the rest into the freezer. They worked like two hands of one body, coordinated and stubborn. By evening they had made it through and more. Repairers revived the oven. Alona cried quietly into Yulia's shoulder. "I'm so afraid of losing what holds me," she confessed. "You're not the only one holding," Yulia said. "I hold you. You hold me." Then came the landlord's raise. They counted and recounted, argued, searched. Yulia said, "What if we risk it and open our own place? Small, but entirely ours." Alona looked at her for a long time, then nodded. With you, yes. Only with you. They found a tiny spot on a quiet street, a brick wall, a wide-sealed window, old shelves. They scrubbed and painted, carried in tables, left the first scratches warm, theirs. Nights were for planning bakes. Days were for testing recipes. Yulia dreamed up new pairings. Ilona honed the method. They argued, made peace, laughed, and each quarrel returned as finer crumb and a sharper crackle. The day the first batch came out, they stared at the golden surface, as if into a mirror. Yulia broke a loaf. Steam poured out, rich and fragrant. Ilona closed her eyes, inhaled, and said, "It smells like something I lost and found again." "It smells like us," Yulia answered. They moved into one home, not out of convenience, out of rhythm. Mornings began with soft steps in the kitchen, parchment rustle, and the quiet music Ilona always played when she felt safe. Some nights they came back exhausted beyond words, fell on the couch holding hands, and laughed for no reason. Some nights they argued to tears, about salt, about crust, about the things rising and sinking inside each of them. When pain pressed at the throat, one ritual saved them. A warm cup, a touch at the wrist, a brief, "I'm here." The world gathered itself again. Rumors drifted through the neighborhood. Some whispered, some stared, some brought flowers for the window and said the bread here felt alive. They didn't hide, and they didn't declaim. They lived, honest, focused, gentle with each other. Ilona stopped flinching when someone's gaze lingered on their hands. Yulia learned to keep silence when it healed, and speak when silence turned into fear. One evening Yulia set a new wooden sign in the window. It said only one word, "Home." Ilona traced the grain with her fingers and finally looked up. "Do you see what we made?" "I do," Yulia said. "We baked a space where we can be ourselves." They stood by the glass, watching people pass, and in the reflection there were two figures, flour on their sleeves, tired smiles, light in their eyes. Ilona rested her head on Yulia's shoulder. Yulia noticed the tremble, not from cold, from fullness. "For a long time, I thought the bakery saved me," Ilona said. "But it was you. You simply didn't let go." "And you saved me," Yulia answered. "We held each other long enough." Nights smelled of vanilla and fresh crust. Somewhere outside someone laughed. A door thudded. In the oven the stone ticked. They kissed, calmly, surely, like people who have reached a place they can stay. The loud world turned suddenly quiet and wide, like a work table dusted with flour. In that space lived everything: labor, fatigue, trust, a whisper, and the balance where nothing needs proving, only presence. Since then, every day began the same and always new. They greeted morning as if it arrived for them, lined up the rolls like letters, and pressed small promises into the dough. People entered and slowed. Here, love didn't need to be loud. Here, love learned to be bred, simple, honest, warm, shared in halves. And if anyone asked for their secret, Ileana and Ilona smiled and said, "No secret at all. Just warm hands that don't let each other go."